It was a cool autumn afternoon in a small town in Ohio. The air was crisp, and the skies were dotted with the last remnants of summer's warmth as a large crowd gathered outside an arena to hear the former president, Donald Trump, speak. The excitement was palpable, the air charged with energy as people from all walks of life, each with their own reasons for supporting him, filled the seats and stood in clusters, eager for his words. Among them was a little girl named Emily. Barely 8 years old, Emily had been brought to the rally by her mother, a staunch supporter of the former president. They had arrived early to secure a good spot, but as they waited, Emily found herself growing increasingly nervous. She had never attended a rally before, and though she had heard many things about Donald Trump, she was unsure about what to expect. Her mom had tried to explain who Trump was, how he had been president, how he had stood up for America, and how he believed in the importance of faith. Emily, however, wasn't quite sure what any of that meant. She had questions, big ones that had been sitting in her heart for a while. That's when she turned to her mother, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Mom, do you think he believes in God?" Emily asked softly, looking up at her mother. Her mother smiled and gently squeezed her hand. "Of course, sweetheart. He's talked about God many times, especially when he was president. He believes, just like we do." Emily nodded, but still felt a tug of uncertainty. She had always been taught to trust in God, to pray every night before bed, and to ask for guidance when she was unsure about something. But at that moment, standing in the middle of the crowd, surrounded by strangers, she realized that she had never really asked anyone, let alone someone as important as Donald Trump, about what it meant to believe in God. She felt a deep yearning in her heart, a need for reassurance. The rally began with Trump taking the stage, waving to the cheering crowd, his familiar bold voice filling the air as he spoke about the nation's future, about strength, and about resilience. But amid his fiery rhetoric and passionate promises, Emily found herself distracted by one thought. She needed to ask him about God. It wasn't a question she had planned to ask, but it was one that had been burning in her heart for weeks. As the speech progressed, Emily could feel the crowd's excitement grow, but there was something else she needed to do, a question that had to be asked. She took a deep breath, holding her mom's hand tightly, and began to make her way through the sea of people toward the stage. Her mom, seeing the determination in her daughter's eyes, followed closely behind her, puzzled but supportive. Emily made her way to the front, pushing past people who seemed unaware of the small figure making her way forward. She reached the edge of the stage, looking up at the former president who was still speaking. He was right there, so close. Her heart pounded in her chest as she gathered her courage. At that moment, Trump noticed her. He paused, his eyes meeting hers as she stood there, her face full of wonder and nervous excitement. The crowd around them hushed, sensing that something unique was unfolding. Trump smiled, his face softening for a moment. "Well, hello there, young lady," he said, bending slightly to meet her gaze. "What's your name?" "Emily," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Trump, I have a question." Her voice shook slightly as she spoke. He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Go ahead, Emily. What's your question?" Emily looked around, a little overwhelmed by the attention, but she took a deep breath and asked the question that had been on her mind for so long. "Mr. Trump, do you believe in God?" For a split second, there was silence, as if the world had stopped spinning. The crowd waited with bated breath, sensing the significance of the question. Trump looked at the little girl, his expression thoughtful. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Yes, Emily," he said, his voice deep and steady. "I absolutely believe in God. I've always believed in him. He's been a guiding force in my life." Emily's eyes widened, her heart lifting as she took in his words. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but hearing those words come from someone like Trump, someone who was so powerful, so important, felt like a reassurance she didn't even know she needed. "God is always with us, Emily," Trump continued. "He's there in the good times and the bad. He gives us strength when we need it, and he guides us when we feel lost. I've seen his hand in my life, and I know he's always watching over all of us." Emily felt her chest tighten as a wave of emotion surged through her. She had grown up in a family where faith was a constant presence. But hearing those words, especially from someone who had been the leader of the free world, touched something deep inside her. She didn't know why, but the tears began to well up in her eyes. Trump continued, unaware of the girl's quiet struggle, speaking more about the importance of faith in life. "When things get tough, Emily, when the world seems like it's falling apart, that's when you turn to God. He's always there to give you the strength you need. You just have to believe." Emily's eyes shimmered with tears as she wiped them away quickly, trying to hold herself together. The crowd was still watching, some with smiles on their faces, some quietly moved by the exchange. For a moment, Emily felt as though the world had slowed down, that it was just her and Trump, connected in a way she couldn't fully explain. "Thank you," Emily whispered, her voice cracking slightly. Trump gave her a warm smile, his voice gentle. "You're very welcome, Emily. Always keep your faith close, and never forget that God is with you." As he turned to address the crowd again, Emily's mom gently took her hand and guided her away from the stage. The tears continued to fall down Emily's cheeks. But this time, they were tears of joy, of relief, and of hope. She had been searching for something bigger than herself, something to believe in, and she had found it in that moment. The crowd erupted in applause, but Emily didn't hear it. She was too lost in the words that had just been spoken to her. For the first time in her life, she felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that no matter what happened in the world around her, she wasn't alone. God was with her. And that was all that mattered. As they made their way back to their seats, Emily's mom smiled down at her, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Emily nodded, still trying to compose herself. "I'm okay, Mom," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I think I understand now." For the rest of the rally, Emily sat quietly, her eyes occasionally drifting up to the stage where Trump continued to speak. But her mind was elsewhere. It was filled with thoughts of God, of faith, and of the powerful conversation she had just had. She had asked a simple question, but in return, she had received something far greater, a moment of connection, a message of hope, and a reminder that God was always there, even in the most unexpected places.